the Texas Rural Water Association. I am in the FMT program.
How many years of experience?
I have 31 years experience in the municipality.
Next.
Good morning. My name is Dean Sharp, and I work with the TRWA FMT program, the Financial Manager on Technical Assistance Program through TCEQ. And I just got started in this industry 37 years ago, I think. So been in it a day or two. Thank you all for being here.
Good morning, I'm Patty Ray, and I'm also a contractor for the TRWA FMT program, and 30 plus years, we'll leave it at that.
She's the youngest in the group.
Hello, welcome everybody today. My name is Ross Brookbank. I'm with Texas Rural Water Association as well. I started with the association in 2016 with the FMT department. I've since moved around to a couple different positions at the organization. I've settled on the membership side of the organization, so that's why you see my booth out there. If you've got any membership questions, please feel free to reach out. We have a strong membership base that represents over 3 million water customers throughout Texas, all of your customers. So we have 770 members currently, so if you've got any questions or concerns or need to know anything about membership, please feel free to reach out. We've got some of our services that we offer on display out there on the table, but I'd like to hear from every one of you if you're members or not, and welcome. Please enjoy the coffee and the donuts, and I don't know if they told you, but there's also beverages in the kitchen as well. So thank all you guys for being here, and I hope you get some useful information today. Thank you.
How many years in the industry?
Well, I'm a new guy. I've only been around for about 15 years, so some of these guys kind of double me with the years of experience, but I pull a little bit of information from all of them and try to use that to continue my knowledge base for a lot of things. So okay. Thank you, Philip.
Okay. Anyone else outside that we need to introduce? Let everybody. Jason, you want to come up and do yours, and then you might get feedback. He got a mic there.
I'm not sure it's on. Yeah, it's off. My name is Jason Knobloch. I'm with Texas Rural Water. I'm the project manager on the TRWA side of the contract for FMT. So I mostly am in the office pointing directions for the field staff to go help you guys. So as far as years, I've been in the water business for 19 years. So I'm also a young pup, but someday. All right, and I guess I'll get this back. Have you already gone?
That's everybody? Okay. Great. Thank you, team. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, y'all been seeing me a lot today. So, my name is Elston Johnson. I've been in the water business almost 30 years. Did 20 years at TCEQ and been on my own for the last 7 years doing regulatory consulting. Continuing to work with TCEQ on a contract basis to help them with implementing Senate Bill 3. And so hopefully we can answer all your questions today. If not, we'll get back to you. I'll give it off to Philip. Here you go.
Thank you. Okay, so I have the right here. It goes right there on the stand. Oh, you can just leave it on the side. Last thing I'm going to ask you to do is take out these wonderful devices. If you would, just please double check to make sure yours is on vibrate, silent. In the event you do have to take a call, as being always responders, we know that sometimes we still have to respond. So if you would go ahead and step out of the room and take the call, or through the back doors back there, and then come on back inside. If you happen to have a calculator app on your phone, I want you to pull it out real quick. And then add these up for me. 30, that's myself, 30 years experience in the industry. 31, 37, 30, 15, 19, and 29. That's 30, 31, 37, 30, 15, 19, and 29. Somebody tell me how many years is that? 191. 191. Almost 200 years of experience at your disposal today. So during the breaks, during the lunch breaks, Reach out to us. We are here for you. We're here to help you with this emergency preparedness plan, so don't feel shy. Now, you add on top of that all the years of experience you have with each other. So we can do it all. Okay? So let's get started. And some of you came in after we officially started, so just so those people know, the restroom facilities is to your rear and to your right there. Okay, so let's go over the agenda for today. Introductions we just did. I will go do the Senate Bill 3 overview and highlights. That's just a very high-level overview. Don't feel like you got to know every part of that in detail. We're going to go through each part of it in great detail throughout the presentation today. Then we'll talk about the Emergency Preparedness Plan waiver process. Then we'll have a break. And then we'll go through all the various options that Senate Bill 3 allows you to look at as a way of complying with the Senate Bill 3 Emergency Preparedness Plan process. And then we'll go through options 8 through 12, take a lunch break. In the afternoon, we'll talk about Text 1 and other mutual aid programs, as well as resiliency funding. After that, we'll look at pull up TCEQ website and other resources, so you'll know where to find things for the resources that's going to help you. And then from 3:30 to 5, we'll be here to provide hands-on, one-on-one assistance to those people that need it. Okay, so that's the plan for today. So I'll cover a little background and history as well as to the overview of Senate Bill 3 EPP. By the way, this presentation is in your booklet that you had, as well as other resources as well if you want to be able to take notes and so forth as we go along. So what started this emergency preparedness plan? It was during Hurricane Ike. There was a large number of people, a lot in the Houston area, but Ike, as you might recall, was a very large storm. It covered a huge area, but it resulted in a lot of people being out of water for numerous days, some as much as 14 days, due to loss of electricity. So as a result of that, the legislature in 2009 and 2011 created requirements for the affected counties of Harris and Fort Bend counties. That was the only two counties affected at that time to develop a EPP, or Emergency Preparedness Plan. The plan consists of a packet of information that you submit to TCEQ for review. TCEQ will review and approve it and then return it to you. It contains information that details how you, the affected utility, will operate under emergency conditions. In Senate Bill 3, the 87 legislature, effective June 2021, so it was a brand new requirement, Texas legislature created the Texas Water Code section 13.1394. A major component was creating emergency preparedness plans requirements for the affected utilities in those other 252 counties. So that's 254 counties in Texas. Harris and Fort Bend County is not applicable to this particular provision. They was applicable in 2009 and 2011. And this was the legislature's response to the winter storm in February. And we all remember that, right? So one of the things we learned from that storm is what? We cannot, as water utility providers, customer service providers, we cannot rely on the utility grid to accomplish our mission. Our mission is to provide that safe, clean water 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. So we cannot rely on the utility grid. So what we have to do is rely on ourselves. So the emergency preparedness plans help us accomplish that goal. Your EPP must demonstrate how you, the utility, will operate at or above 20 psi during an extended power outage that lasts more than 24 hours. That's the trigger, 24 hours. And then ensure emergency operations as soon as safe and practical following the occurrence of a natural disaster. So safe and practical is important words there. So you're not expected to go out in the middle of an ice storm or Winter Storm Uri when the roads are frozen over and it's not safe to travel. That is not what you're being asked to do. But when it's safe and practical, do so. When the local authorities say, hey, now you can drive on the roads, it's okay, that's when we ask you to go out. The affected utilities must submit their EPP to TCEQ by March 1st, 2022. Which means you don't want to wait until, February 28th to submit your plan. You want to be thinking about maybe February 1st or shortly after the first of the year or sooner. And then you must implement the plan by July 1st of 2022. TCEQ has the responsibility to review and approve the EPP to determine if the alternative powered option, that's that 1 through 14 options we're going to go through later, if that power option selected will provide the system with the electrical power necessary to pressurize your system during the emergency situations. Again, no less than 20 psi. Of course, it is not intended for the affected utilities for Harris and Fort Bend counties. They were already covered in 2009 and 2011. There are some different requirements for those counties. So systems in those, they have a different pressure requirement. Actually, their PSI requirement is 35 PSI, and they have few options available. So what is an affected utility? The Texas Water Code Section 131394 defines an affected utility as a retail public utility, an exempt utility, or provider or conveyor of potable or raw water service that furnishes water service to more than one customer. Now, a lot of times in the TCEQ world, public water system world, we think about the 15 service connections or 25 persons. But this law is different. It's more than one customer. And of course, it's not affected by Texas Water Code Section 131395, which is Harris and Fort Bend County. So that's what an affected utility is. Is there anybody in here that is a wholesale provider of water service to customers? Okay, great. So there are some special provisions that we might get with y'all on during the break and so forth. We'll see how it plays out. So we got about 5 or 6, looks like, Elston, in here today. Now, those customers can either be full-time or temporary residents of the water system. Examples include, of course, public water systems, hospitals, prisons, hotels, motels, recovery centers, RV parks. I think we had one RV park in here. Can anybody tell me what those systems have in common? Thank you. Overnight accommodation, Gold Star right up here front said it. They have overnight accommodations.
On the hospitals, does it drill down to individual hospitals, or can one plan cover all hospitals?
His question is, does this requirement apply to individual hospitals, or does one plan covers all hospitals? These are hospital or any of these facilities must have their own water system. So if they're in a hospital inside the city of Georgetown, and Georgetown is their public water provider, we're not talking about that hospital. They already get, Georgetown would be responsible for providing the emergency preparedness plan for them. But if it's a standalone hospital that has their own public water system, then it would apply. And the same for each one of these type of facilities. Not affected utilities, a non-community system without overnight accommodations. Again, that's the key, overnight accommodations. Schools. Some schools have dormitories, some don't. So if it's Southwestern University here in Georgetown, they have dormitories. If they had their own public water system, they would be affected. But since they get water from Georgetown, they're not affected. The city of Georgetown is the affected utility. Daycare centers, restaurants, industrial plants and complexes, office buildings, Churches, some churches provide overnight accommodations, some don't. School districts, some school districts have their own public water system, and some provide overnight accommodation. So in that case, they would be an affected utility. So like we said earlier, it could and does apply to a system that does not meet the definition of a public water system. If you provide service to more than one customer or two, and they have overnight accommodations, they are very likely an affected utility. And if they could apply also to raw water providers. There's some caveats there we'll talk about later. So some definition. What is emergency operations? As it relates to Senate Bill 3, it means the operation of a water system during an extended power outage that impacts the operations of the affected utility. By operations of the affected utility, we're talking about the ability to meet the mission of the utility, providing safe water. An extended power outage means a power outage lasting more than 24 hours. So at that 24th hour plus 1 second, that's the trigger, 24 hours. An affected utility means a retail public utility or exempt utility or provider or conveyor of potable or raw water service. If it furnishes water service to more than one customer and is not an affected utility under 13.1395, which would be Harris and Fort Bend County. So Senate Bill 3 requires that during the emergency operation of its water system during an extended power outage, which is again more than 24 hours, at a minimum water pressure of 20 pounds per square inch or at a water pressure level approved by the commission. So if for some reason you apply for an exception and TCEQ has a different PSI requirement for your particular system, then that's the one you would follow. But in general, it's 20 PSI. And again, as soon as safe and practical following the occurrence of a natural disaster. Talk about that. So let's look at some quick overview of the options. Excuse me. Maintenance of an automatic starting auxiliary generator. That's one of the options. We're going to go through all these in detail. The sharing of an auxiliary generator capacity with one or more affected utilities. The negotiation of a leasing and contracting agreement, including emergency mutual aid agreements with other public utilities, either exempt utilities or conveyors of raw water service, if the agreements provide for coordination with the Division of Emergency Management and the Governor's Office. That's TDEM, Texas Department of Emergency Management. So there has to be a provision of that agreement that is going to be coordinated with the Texas Department of Emergency Management. The use of portable generators capable of serving multiple facilities equipped with Quick Connect. They must have Quick Connect capacity, like a portable generator, trailer mounted, take it out, plug it in. The use of on-site electrical generation or electrical distributed generational facilities, so you're generating your own electricity on-site. Hardening of the electrical transmission and electrical distribution system. And then for existing facilities, this is for existing facilities only. The maintenance of a direct engine or right angle drive. It must be in place as of today. You can't go out and install it later. Designation of a water system as a critical load facility or redundant, isolated, or dedicated electrical feed. You can also look at water storage capabilities. Again, we'll go through all these in detail. Water supplies delivered from outside the service area of an affected utility. The ability to provide water through artesian flows. If you have that capability, that's an option for you. Redundant interconnectivity between pressure zones. So if you have a water system and you have more than one pressure zone, excuse me, battling with something today. then that's an option for you. You have, say, 3 pressure zones, and the way your system is hydraulically designed, 1 pressure zone can meet that 20 PSI, that's an option for you. Emergency water demand rules to maintain emergency operations. How many people have a drought contingency plan already? Hopefully everyone. So in your plan, if you use the TCEQ template in development of your plan, you already have some demand restrictions in that. That's what we're talking about there, and we'll go into that later on. And then, of course, the last option is any other alternative that TCEQ approves. We was in Amarillo a few weeks ago talking about this, and someone jokingly said they was going to get some cows and put them in a circle, put some hay or something in front of them, let them walk around and generate electricity for them. If it's a plan that would generate electricity, maintain 20 PSI, and TCEQ would approve it, it's optional. We're actually going to talk about some options, some other alternative options as well today. Okay, so each affected utility that supplies, provides, or conveys raw surface water shall include in its emergency plan provisions for demonstrating the capability of each raw water intake pump station, this is for our raw water suppliers, pump station, and pressure facility to provide raw water service to its wholesale customers during emergencies. And here's the caveat I was talking about earlier. This subsection does not apply to raw water services that are unnecessary. So if for some reason in your arrangement it's been deemed that is unnecessary during an emergency, your service is not needed during an emergency, or otherwise subject to interruption or curtailment during emergencies under a contract. So if the contract of the wholesale service provider to retail customers, Trinity, for example, if that contract says city XYZ, if during the emergency we are exempted from providing service to you, then you're excluded. If it says that in that contract. There's some other caveats we'll deal with there. Those are very particular to raw water providers, so we'll deal with that one-on-one on those. But that is part of the provision. In the last 3 workshops we've done, we've had examples of both. We had some raw water providers that had a contract to provide raw water during non-emergencies, and that same raw water provider had some other customers where they provided the retail service, and they had to provide it during emergencies. So they were required to do an EPP for those customers. Under that definition, they are an affected utility. The Senate Bill 3 requires TCEQ, the Commission, to adopt rules to implement this section as an alternative to any rule requiring elevated storage. We'll talk about that. The Commission shall provide an affected utility with access to the Commission's financial, managerial, and technical contractors to assist the utility in complying with applicable emergency preparedness plan submissions deadline. In your packet, you have this brochure. This is what that last statement is talking about, this program. This program was implemented by TCEQ in 1998. It provides on-site, one-on-one assistance to water systems all across the state, persons like myself, private consultants, and the rest of the team members and others. I think there's about 20 on the team right now that can come out and provide assistance to you. It's not limited to emergency preparedness plan. This, as you can see in this brochure, there is a huge list of services and assistance we can provide, but certainly with the EPP as well. So take advantage of it. That's a program that's TCEQ started, and it's your tax dollars at work. Another option is an emergency generator used as part of an improved emergency plan must be operated and maintained according to the manufacturer specifications. So of course, you want to have on hand the manual, the owner's manual that came with that generator, and follow the operating procedures, including maintenance requirements for that particular generator. And then TCEQ is directed to inspect each utility to ensure that the utility complies with their approved plan. And then the commission, TCEQ, shall consider whether compliance with this section would cause a significant financial burden on the customers of the affected utility. Not a financial burden on the utility, but on the customers. In the next presentation, we're going to cover the waiver process. The affected utility may adopt and enforce limitations on water use. That's your drought contingency plan we talked about. And of course, the information in your emergency response plan is considered confidential, meaning it is not subject to the Texas Public Information Act, formerly called the Texas Open Records Act. It's excluded from that. This information is not to be released to the public. So if somebody comes up and says, hey, I'm a member of the public and I want a copy of your emergency response plan, you don't have to give it to them. So compliance simply means choose an appropriate option, complete and submit to TCEQ the EPP template. One word of caution on the form here, TCEQ 20536B. You have a copy in your packet, but a lot of you may want to go to TCEQ website. We'll show you how to do that later and download it. There is another one template out there that has an A at the end of it. That's for Harris County and Fort Bend County. So make sure you don't use that one. Look for the B. And then if you think you need to submit a waiver, we'll talk about that for financial burden purposes. Due dates, November 1st, of course, which is come and gone. All affected utilities were required to submit to the PUC under Project 52299 a letter indicating what facilities that you have that qualify for critical load status. Okay? Just March 1st, submit your completed EPP to TCEQ no later than March 1st, and then implement the plan no later than July 1st. Utility facts, this is talks about the November 1st filing deadline. This is a publication of the Public Utility Commission and what their requirements are. So what do you do? This question has come up already. What do you do if you didn't know about this and you didn't file the critical load status letter with the PUC by November 1st? What you do is file it as soon as you can. A lot of people still don't know about it, so the sooner you get it filed, the better. If you have questions about that, need more information, see me during the break. Does anybody have connections of more than 3,301 in the room? I'm sorry, not connections, I misspoke. Population of 3,301. Okay, so the people that meet that test, have you already filed your emergency response plan with the EPA regarding American Water Infrastructure Act? If you have not and don't know what I'm talking about, see me during the break. Or me or Elston can help you with that. Okay, so this is the PUC filing letter, system name, description of all water systems and sewer facilities that qualify for critical load status. You can include a map if you would like to. And then who the emergency contact people is, both the primary and the alternate person. Where do you file your critical load designation? PUC of Texas. You also provide it to your transmission distribution utility. That is typically the entity that owns the power lines and the power poles. They transmit the electricity. Some of you, that's the same person. Some of you, you have a transmission distribution utility, and you also have a retail service provider, which is the person that sends you your bill. And so that person needs to get some notice as well. The Office of Emergency Management for the county, and then of course the Texas Division of Emergency Management. We do now have an email address for them. We'll provide that later on. This is where you file it at. They have a filing interchange. The instructions for how to use the filing interchange is the very next link right here. So when you go to the PUC website, you need to know how to use this interchange. You never used it before. Watch this sort of PowerPoint right here. Now, if you want to see what other people have filed, you can click on Filing Search, put in that project number, and then it'll pull up everyone else's filings There's no set form or set way to do it. The utility factor said, this is what the information we want. You can file it in any format you so choose. And this link is in your page as well for examples. Here are some of the transmission distribution utilities, their emails where you can file. And you can also use this link at the bottom to locate yours on a map. I have found there are some differences in the map. For example, in Victoria, there's a Victoria Electric Co-op. They're not on the map, but they are the transmission distribution utility. So you have to know your area. Okay. So with that, Elsa will come up and go through the financial waiver process. You already mic'd, yeah, great. Thank you.
Yes. Sure, go ahead.
So, what provisions or rules are in place that are ensuring manufacturers have available generators for all the utilities that are going to be required to, purchase all this stuff? I know everybody with COVID and everything is getting hit pretty hard, and these deadlines are coming up pretty fast. And I know as everybody's been waiting, for a while to be able to accomplish this, but all the utilities, we have over 385 utilities. We're going to be looking for generators. We have issues where some equipment is on different phases and stuff. It requires a lot of thought and effort to plan out everything for all the utilities. What is going on that side to ensure manufacturers are aware of this stuff?
So that's a good question. We'll be getting that a lot. And so you asked if there's any rules in place. There's no rules that I'm aware of that are in place that are requiring generator manufacturers to pick up the pace, be engaged in this process. What we are hearing is that lead times for generators are ranging anywhere from 21 weeks to 40 weeks. So what do you do with that? It's a good question. I think what we'll have to do is we'll have to take that into account as you plan what you're going to do with EPP and go from there. There's also the other options that are available. We're going to talk about this a little later, but what we found in the Harris and Fort Bend County programs is that there are times where there are some options that'll work temporarily until you can get the option that you really want, or really will be effective. And so those are some of those discussions you can have one-on-one with us, with TCEQ, to kind of figure out how to manage that. But yeah, there's nothing pushing, that I'm aware of, pushing the generator manufacturing community to produce things. And, and they're facing the same problems that everybody is, right? And so it's not anything that they're building, believe me, they're building as fast as they can because they know the demand is just going up like that. But the reality is, yeah, it's lagging a little bit. Yeah.
Because, with rules and everything, there's that period of financial burden or impact that you do ahead of the rule. And it just seems like this is going a lot faster than other rules that I've experienced, with everything. And there should be a coordinated effort to push back, I guess, on some of these timelines. It's not going to be, reasonable or accomplished within the set forth deadlines. And I just wanted to know if there was anybody bringing that up to the Senate or legislators and stuff, aside from probably us.
Yeah. I'm not sure about that. I know that there is definitely some concern. We've done a few workshops already across the state, and that's come up in every single one. And so, yeah, it's just something that you're going to have to deal with case-by-case basis with TCEQ as you put your EPP together or your waiver, however you're going to comply with the requirements. Good question. I'll go to Brent, then you. Go ahead.
Is there any effort that the PUC to deal with this? They're getting notified of all this critical load. Is there any mechanism in the PUC to try to coordinate meeting these critical loads or we're still having issues with not even being contacted when they plan interruption of service, when they don't even contact them. So there ought to be an effort, maybe y'all can bring that message forward. There needs to be an effort for PUC get the utilities, the electric utilities to start working for critical load.
Okay. So I'll kind of repeat the question in case you didn't hear it. Is there any kind of coordinated effort with the Public Utility Commission to speed up, coordinate the efforts of designating facilities as critical load? And actually, Philip's a bit more of an expert on PUC activity, so I'll let you answer that. Thank you, oh, yes.
I know that if you're on, you get on a list, sometimes the federal government, military bases, has these sales, and you can buy a brand new generator still in the crate. They're like diesel engines and things from the federal government in an auction. And they have some, a lot of times, these very military bases for sale. And you can get them at a better price value than you could just for the manufacturer sometimes. If you're a small entity and you're trying to, squeeze a dollar, sometimes that can help you. You're liable to have to spend it on the far end of it, hire an electrician to do your switching operations. But that's another source that the manufacturer wants to get them out there.
Yeah, we're actually going to cover that a little bit later, but thank you for that point. Yeah, that's what will come in a little bit later in the workshop.
In terms of critical load status, what you have to understand is that the person that determines that is the transmission distribution utility. And a lot of them were unaware of this requirement as well. Some of them have applications that you can fill out and submit. Most of the ones that I've seen that do have an application, it requires an annual submission to determine if you meet their critical load status. So it's the same process that hospitals go through and some other entities where the electric transmitter, the person that provides the electricity, not the retail provider, but the transmitter distribution utility, they decide, they make the determination if you qualify for critical load status or not. So that's back to my original point in my opening comments. What we learned from this storm is that we cannot rely on the electric utility. Regardless of what rule is passed, regardless of what happens, we have to go with a mindset of, which I know you already have, of excellence. What can I do in my utility with my resources to make sure that I can accomplish my mission of providing that safe water to my customer 24/7? We're going to go through all the various options here after the break, but I want to invite you to have the mindset of saying, rather than this is a rule, this is another compliance requirement, but how can I take care of my customers, make my own self reliable? And when you find out how God has designed our minds, when we ask the question, how can I, versus I can't do it, when you say I can't do it, your mind would automatically shut down to options and things that might be available to you. But when you ask the question, how can I, then you're going to find out, you're going to start discovering ways to do it. And then, like the gentleman just said, he just talked about the generators through the Army and other sources. When we all work together to accomplish the same mission, we'll find ways to do it. But then the critical load status is something, you can submit your letter to PUC, but you can't make the determination. That's going to be up to the transmission distribution utility. And again, you're going to have to do it every year. I ran across 2 transmission distribution utilities so far that don't even have a letter yet. And their response to me is that we're not going to even get an application. I'm sorry, they don't even have an application. We're not going to even create an application until after the PUC come out with rules. So, yep.
My main question is, I mean, I'm all for the emergency preparedness that we have to do. I believe in that. But I also want to know, what is the Public Utility Commission doing to the electric providers that obviously are slacking? And we're pulling our financials, and it all goes back to the customer. No matter what you try, no matter how much money the government gives you, it all falls back on the customers. And my issue is, if these electrical companies cannot provide for us in emergency situations, then the state needs to be looking at them going, how come all our electricity is being shipped out of this state instead of being stayed here and supporting our state and our people? I want to know why the state's not nailing them for stuff and passing it on to us to be able to provide, which I don't have a problem with us providing, because I know we have to do it. But they also should have to provide electricity, and if they can't do it, they need to be the ones that's getting the nails hammered in them going, you need to up your game or get out.
Yeah, I mean, we couldn't agree with you more, and from what I understand, there are activities being done at the PUC toward the generators of electricity as well as the transmitter distribution units. But they haven't come out with a rule yet, and I know there's a lot of discussion going on from the meetings I've had with them personally and other people that have had meetings with them, but they haven't come out with it yet. But that is being looked at. I can tell you for sure.
You got one back there.
What is, I hear the requirements, what's the penalty side of this?
What's the penalty side if you don't meet the requirements is the question. And that's a good question. I am not sure if that's been worked out yet. With TCEQ, I can tell you in the program that exists now in Harrison-Fort Bend County, TCEQ has been basically following their current administrative enforcement process as well as their penalty policy on that. And so, and the legislation didn't do anything to separate this out to be more stringent or less stringent than the current process that TCEQ uses. So.
Financial waivers available for, I'm loud enough, for someone who, for someone who it creates such a burden that they can't afford it. But what about those of us, just like in your study, it goes back to the customer regardless. So you're putting the burden on your customers for this financially. So it's not necessarily a burden that we can't afford, but there's a mandate for something now that, once again, there's no funding to help pay for.
Yeah, so the waiver is based on qualifying for the waiver, and we'll go through that. It's based on demonstrating the burden on your customers, not the utility. And so we're actually going to walk through that and I can try to explain that to you a little bit better.
I just feel like that's going to be in extreme cases. And what I'm saying is, for the ones of us that we probably can't afford it, it certainly digs into our revenues and our other capital projects we like to do. So it's not, we're probably not going to fall in that case where it would be burdensome enough for us to qualify financially, even with our customers. I'm just trying to figure out how these mandates keep going on and on and on. If there's no grants, there's nothing to help out the ones that fall in between the cracks.
Okay, I hear your question. So, yeah, don't have an answer for that. You know, this is a legislative action. I'm not sure, you know, the outcome of that. We're going to talk about funding options this afternoon that some of you will be able to qualify for. And so you have to kind of work through that as you go through this process. That's the best answer I have for you on that one right now. Thank you. Any other questions before we jump into waivers? All right.